every meaningful transfer. You cannot change what you cannot see, and you cannot protect yourself from what you refuse to recognize. Toxic people are not always the loud, dramatic figures we imagine. Sometimes they come disguised as friends, colleagues, or even family members who, little by little, drain your strength, distort your self-image, and derail your sense of direction. To remove them, you first have to recognize them, and this requires both honesty and courage. Toxicity reveals itself in patterns, not in isolated moments. Everyone can have a bad day. Everyone can be moody, impatient, or even hurtful at times, but toxicity is different. Toxic people operate in cycles. They repeat behaviors that harm others while refusing accountability. If you pay attention, you'll notice the repetition, the constant criticism that eats away at your confidence, the manipulation that makes you doubt your own judgment, or the negativity that suffocates your dreams before they've even begun. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to protecting yourself. One of the most common signs of toxicity is control. Toxic individuals often attempt to control not only your behavior, but also your emotions. They may guilt trip you into doing what they want, or they may subtly punish you with silence, withdrawal, or anger if you assert yourself. Over time, you begin to anticipate their reactions, adjusting your own behavior just to avoid conflict. This is not love. This is not friendship. It is bondage disguised as connection. Another pattern lies in how they treat your boundaries. Healthy people respect limits. Toxic people see boundaries as obstacles to be crossed. If you say no, they push until you say yes. If you need space, they intrude. If you express your feelings, they dismiss them as overreactions. They thrive on diminishing your sense of worth, so that you begin to believe your needs are unreasonable. The more you compromise, the more they consume, leaving you exhausted and resentful. Then there is the energy they bring into your life. Some people enter a room and light it up. They inspire you, they motivate you, they leave you feeling fuller than before. Toxic people do the opposite. They drain. After spending time with them, you feel smaller, weaker, and less hopeful. Their constant complaints, their focus on problems rather than solutions, their refusal to celebrate your victories, all of it slowly poisons your spirit. You may not even notice it at first, but the effect compounds, and before long, their darkness begins to feel normal. Perhaps the most dangerous form of toxicity is the one that disguises itself as care. Some toxic people mask their manipulation with words of concern. They discourage your dreams by pretending to protect you. They criticize your choices while claiming they just want the best for you. They may even wrap their control in affection, convincing you that their overreach is proof of love. But love does not belittle. Love does not hold you back. Love does not require you to shrink so that another person can feel big. Recognizing toxicity demands self-reflection as well. Sometimes we allow toxic people to remain in our lives because they mirror unresolved parts of ourselves. If you believe deep down that you are unworthy of respect, you may tolerate disrespect. If you are afraid of being alone, you may accept mistreatment just to avoid emptiness. The problem is not only out there, it is also within. Identifying toxic patterns in others forces you to confront your own patterns of acceptance. And that confrontation is where true freedom begins. It's important to remember, not all toxic people are malicious. Some are simply broken, carrying their own wounds into every relationship. But while compassion is noble, it cannot come at the cost of your well-being. You are not responsible for healing people who refuse to heal themselves. Recognizing toxicity means acknowledging reality, even if it's painful. It means saying, this person, regardless of their intentions, is hurting me, and I have the right to protect myself. The process of recognizing, you may resist it at first because it threatens the stability of your relationships. To admit that someone you care about is toxic is to admit that something must change. But clarity, though painful, is liberating. Once you see the truth, you can no longer be trapped by illusion. Awareness shatters denial, and denial is the cage that keeps you stuck. So begin by observing. Pay attention to how you feel after interactions. Do you feel stronger or weaker? Do you feel safe or judged? Do you feel encouraged or diminished? The answers to these questions will reveal more than any excuse or justification you can create for the other person. When you recognize the patterns of toxicity, you reclaim the power to decide who deserves a place in your life. Awareness is the foundation. Without it, you are at the mercy of forces you do not understand. But with it, you gain the clarity to act. Recognizing the patterns of toxicity is not about blaming others, it is about liberating yourself. It is about saying, I refuse to let someone else's chaos dictate my peace. It is the first step and perhaps the hardest, but every journey to freedom begins with seeing clearly what you must leave behind. Once you've recognized who the toxic people in your life are, the next challenge is protecting yourself from their influence. Awareness without action is incomplete. If recognition is about clarity, then protection is about courage. It requires you to draw lines, enforce boundaries, and accept that you have the right, indeed, the responsibility, because here's the truth, no one else will do it for you. You think of your mind and your emotions as a house. You are the owner, the builder, the caretaker of that house. Every thought, every emotion, every dream is a piece of furniture inside it. Now imagine leaving your doors wide open day and night, allowing anyone to wander in and rearrange, damage, or steal what they please. That is what happens when you let toxic people invade your mental and emotional space. They don't knock, they don't ask, they just take. And unless you set boundaries, they will keep taking until there is nothing left. Protecting your mental and emotional space begins with saying no, a word that terrifies many of us. We have been conditioned to believe that saying no is rude, selfish, or unkind. But boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. They do not exist to shut people out forever, but to allow you to decide who comes in and under what conditions. A door with no lock is not a symbol of kindness. It is a symbol of vulnerability. Similarly, a life with no boundaries is not generosity. It is self-neglect. Toxic people thrive where boundaries are absent. They test limits constantly, pushing further each time you allow them to. If you give them an inch, they take a mile, and then they demand another. Protecting your emotional space means making it clear through words and consistent action that there are limits to what you will tolerate. It means refusing to engage in manipulation, refusing to absorb constant negativity, refusing to carry responsibilities that do not belong to you. Consider how toxic people often operate. They drain your energy with endless complaints. They shift their burdens onto your shoulders. They demand your time without reciprocating. They treat your availability as their entitlement. If you are not careful, their problems become your problems, and your life becomes a stage for their drama. Protecting yourself means stepping off that stage. You are not responsible for fixing people who refuse to fix themselves. You are not obligated to sacrifice your peace for someone else's chaos. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Many people struggle to protect their emotional space because they fear being labeled as cold, selfish, or uncaring. Toxic people exploit this fear. The moment you set a boundary, they accuse you of being unfair or abandoning them. They twist the narrative to make you feel guilty for simply taking care of yourself. This is where strength of conviction matters. Protecting your mental space means learning to withstand guilt tripping, knowing that the discomfort of someone else's disapproval is far less costly than the destruction of your inner peace. Another part of protection involves your environment. It's not only about people, it's also about what you consume daily. The conversations you engage in, the media you absorb, the environments you spend time in, these all affect your mental and emotional state. If your social media feeds are filled with negativity, comparison, and hostility, then you're inviting toxicity through a screen. Protection requires curation. You must actively choose what and who gets access to your mind. Protecting your mental space also requires self-awareness. Boundaries are not only about pushing others back, they are also about keeping yourself aligned. You have to be honest about what drains you and what nourishes you. Maybe it's a friendship that leaves you anxious, a relative whose calls always end in criticism, or a coworker who manipulates you into carrying their workload. Recognizing the drain and then limiting your exposure is not cruelty. It is sanity. There's also a deeper principle here. You teach people how to treat you. If you constantly allow disrespect, people will assume it is acceptable. If you overextend yourself to meet others' demands, they will assume you enjoy it. Protecting your emotional space is, therefore, not only about shielding yourself, it's about setting a standard. You are sending a message. This is how I expect to be treated. This is how I expect to be spoken to. This is how I expect my time and energy to be valued. And people who respect you will honor that. Those who don't reveal themselves as toxic. And what about those who don't listen, even when you set clear boundaries? Sometimes the most powerful form of protection is distance. You cannot negotiate endlessly with people who are committed to disrespecting you. Distance is not always permanent exile. It can simply mean reducing your exposure, limiting the role someone plays in your life, or choosing when and how you engage. Distance creates space for healing, for reflection, and for the kind of peace that toxic people cannot give you. Protecting your mental and emotional space is not selfish. It is essential. You cannot pour into others if your own cup is empty. You cannot pursue your purpose if your energy is consumed by drama. You cannot live freely if your inner world is constantly invaded by someone else's storms. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are the foundation of healthy connection. Without them, you do not have relationships, you have entanglements. So protect your space fiercely. Guard your mind like a treasure chest, because it is. Guard your emotions like a garden, because they are. And remember this, no one has the right to occupy your life at the expense of your peace. Protecting your mental and emotional space is not an act of rejection. It is an act of respect, both for yourself and for the kind of life you are determined to build. It is not enough to simply remove toxic people from your life. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human heart. When you cut out what drains you, you must replace it with what nourishes you. Otherwise, loneliness, fear, or nostalgia will tempt you back into the very relationships you escaped. The question then becomes, with what do you fill the empty spaces? The answer lies in cultivating relationships that are rooted in growth, not toxicity. Connections that strengthen you, challenge you, and expand your potential. Human beings are profoundly shaped by the company they keep. You don't just interact with people, you absorb them. Their language becomes part of your language. Their attitudes influence your mindset. Their standards shape your own sense of what is possible. Spend enough time with someone and you will begin to mirror their habits, their thought patterns, even their energy. That is why choosing your relationships is one of the most powerful decisions you will ever make. You are, in many ways, the average of the people you surround yourself with. Toxic relationships keep you stagnant because they operate on a cycle of depletion. But growth-oriented relationships function differently. They pour into you while also challenging you to pour into yourself. These are the people who celebrate your victories without jealousy, who give constructive criticism without cruelty, who stand beside you when the world feels heavy. They don't just tolerate your growth, they demand it because your flourishing reflects their love for you. One of the most valuable traits of growth-oriented people is that they inspire. They don't drain your energy with endless negativity. They ignite your energy with possibility. Spend 10 minutes with someone who thinks creatively, who speaks with optimism, who believes in progress, and you will leave the conversation with your imagination expanded. Inspiration is contagious. Just as toxicity spreads like poison, growth spreads like light. Another mark of growth-oriented relationships is accountability. Toxic people will discourage you from accountability because your weakness benefits them. They can control you more easily when you're uncertain or unstable. But healthy people hold you to a standard, not because they want to control you, but because they want to see you rise. A true friend will say, "I believe you can do better," not out of criticism, but out of belief in your potential. That kind of accountability can be uncomfortable, but it is the discomfort of growth, not the discomfort of oppression. Replacing toxicity also requires you to shift your own mindset. Often people escape toxic relationships only to repeat the cycle with someone new because they have not yet adjusted their internal compass. You attract what you are prepared for. If you still believe you deserve to be diminished, you will unconsciously gravitate toward people who diminish you. If you believe you are unworthy of support, you will avoid people who genuinely want to help you. That is why personal growth is inseparable from relational growth. You must raise your standards for yourself before you can raise your standards for the company you keep. So what does it look like practically to replace toxicity with growth? It begins with intentionality. Seek out environments where people are striving, learning, and building. Join communities centered on growth, whether that's a study group, a professional network, a spiritual gathering, or even a fitness community. Growth-minded people gather where growth is happening. Position yourself in those places, and you will naturally form connections with those who share your desire to move forward. It also requires courage. Growth-oriented relationships can be intimidating because they force you to confront your own limitations. It's easier to stay with toxic people who expect nothing from you than to walk with people who expect the best from you. But growth is never found in comfort. Choose the discomfort of accountability over the comfort of decay. Choose the challenge of being stretched over the ease of being stagnant. Replacing toxicity also means redefining what you value in relationships. Many people cling to unhealthy connections because they confuse familiarity with loyalty or drama with passion. But true relationships are not built on how long you've known someone or how intense your interactions feel. They are built on trust, respect, encouragement, and shared vision. Ask yourself, does this person want to see me rise? Do they celebrate my growth, or do they feel threatened by it? The answers will tell you whether a relationship belongs in your life. As you replace toxicity with growth-oriented connections, something profound happens. You begin to transform. Your conversations change. Your standards rise, your sense of possibility expands. Where once you were drained, now you are fueled. Where once you doubted yourself, now you believe. Because the people around you reflect back to you the truth, that you are capable of more than you imagined. And here's a final truth worth holding on to. Healthy relationships do not eliminate struggle, but they give you strength for it. Toxic people multiply your burdens. Growth-oriented people help you carry them. Toxic people make you feel smaller. Healthy people remind you of your potential. Toxic people chain you to the past. Healthy people walk with you into the future. In the end, your circle is not just a reflection of who you are, it is a prediction of who you are becoming. So do not stop at removing toxicity. Replace it. Fill your life with those who push you forward, not backward. Surround yourself with people who see the best in you, even when you cannot see it yourself. Because when your circle is aligned with growth, your life will inevitably move in the direction of growth. And that is where freedom truly begins. One of the hardest parts of removing toxic people is not the act of recognition, or even the act of setting boundaries. It is the act of letting go feels like loss, even when what you are losing is poison. This is why so many people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships. They choose familiarity over freedom. They cling to what they know, even when what they know is slowly destroying them. No, there is a strange comfort in the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. Think about it. The mind adapts to patterns, and once a pattern becomes routine, breaking it feels like stepping into the unknown. A toxic relationship, no matter how harmful, is still predictable. You know, the rhythm of manipulation, the cadence of criticism, the cycle of highs and lows. Freedom, on the other hand, feels uncertain. What if you end up alone? What if no one else ever loves you? What if you regret walking away? These questions haunt people and keep them chained to relationships that strip them of peace. But here's the truth. Familiarity is not the same as safety. Just because something is known does not mean it is good. The fact that you can predict the storm does not mean you should live in it. Freedom always carries risk, but so does captivity. The difference is that captivity guarantees stagnation, while freedom creates the possibility of growth. By clinging to the familiar, you trade your future for the illusion of stability. And choosing freedom over familiarity requires courage, the courage to tolerate uncertainty. It means stepping into a season of not knowing exactly what comes next, but trusting that what lies ahead will be better than what you are leaving behind. Toxic people often weaponize your fear of the unknown. They tell you that you'll never find someone else who understands you, that you'll regret cutting ties, that you are incapable of surviving without them. These are lies designed to keep you small. Choosing freedom is the refusal to accept those lies. Letting go also requires grieving. We often imagine that freedom is all joy, but the truth is it usually begins with sorrow. You are not only releasing a person, you are releasing the version of yourself that existed with them. You are letting go of the memories, the routines, the shared experiences, and even the hope that things might one day be different. Grief is natural, and it should not be ignored, but grief is not a signal to return. It is a signal that you are in transition, moving from what was toward what will be. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension here. Every time you let go of toxicity, you make space for peace. Every time you choose freedom, you open the door to possibility. The universe, or if you prefer life itself, cannot fill your hands with something new if they are still clinging to what is broken. Familiarity is heavy. It keeps you holding on to what no longer serves you. Freedom is light. It requires you to release the weight. But we must acknowledge something important. Freedom is not only about walking away from people, it is about walking toward yourself. Toxic relationships often demand that you shrink, your opinions silenced, your dreams dismissed, your boundaries ignored. Familiarity becomes a prison cell where you live a smaller version of your life. Choosing freedom means reclaiming your voice, honoring your dreams, and giving yourself permission to expand again. It is not only about who you are leaving, it is about who you are becoming. Some may argue that walking away is selfish, but consider this. Is it selfish to refuse harm? Is it selfish to protect your peace? Is it selfish to pursue the life you were meant to live? No. What is selfish is expecting someone to stay in pain for your comfort. What is selfish is demanding loyalty while offering only toxicity in return. Choosing freedom is not selfishness, it is self-respect. And yes, freedom can be lonely at first. When you remove toxic people, you may find yourself with fewer friends, fewer conversations, fewer places to go. But solitude is not the same as emptiness. Solitude is a season of rebuilding, of reconnecting with yourself, of discovering who you are without the constant noise of manipulation. Familiarity fills your life with voices that drown out your own. Freedom gives you silence, and in that silence you rediscover your strength. Over time, freedom becomes fertile ground. It allows new relationships to grow, ones rooted in respect, kindness, and authenticity. It allows your passions to breathe again, your ambitions to take shape again, your heart to heal again. Familiarity keeps you chained to what you already know. Freedom invites you to discover what you have not yet imagined. Ultimately, the choice between familiarity and freedom is a choice between fear and faith. Familiarity whispers, at least you know what to expect. Freedom whispers, there is more for you than this. Fear keeps you clinging to the shore. Faith pushes you into the open sea where new horizons await. And though the sea is uncertain, it is also vast, filled with possibilities that the shore could never give you. So choose freedom even when it feels frightening. Choose freedom even when it requires grief. Choose freedom even when it means walking alone for a while. Because in the end, familiarity chains you to the past, but freedom carries you into the future. And if you have the courage to let go, you will discover something profound, that the space left by toxic people is not emptiness, but opportunity. It is the beginning of a life that is lighter, clearer, and far more aligned with the person you were always meant to be.